Yes, guys, we're back. Nuclear Reaction Faction here, reacting to Turkey Tom's new video, Shmorky, from Edgy Animator to Diaper Degenerate. I'll put the link to the full video in the description. Go check it out. Thanks to Turkey Tom, and let's get it.
Normal artists out there on the internet just trying to make a living from their passion. On the other hand, certain online artists seem to have a penchant for turning out to be freaks. And one man, or should I say, one clerf, did it way before it was cool.
Wait, what's a clerf? A magical creature of an unknown gender.
Shmorky went from animating viral videos for one of the most influential websites of the 2000s, and even Adult Swim, to being exposed as a diaper furry fetishist, all because he withheld his schizophrenic girlfriend's medication and recorded her having a meltdown.
Tell me if you love me or not, or if you're in on this or not.
In on what?
While his current—
What? You can't do that. That's torture. Like, she could have ended up doing something really drastic. Like, and you guys know what I'm talking about, yeah? When I say something really drastic, like to herself or to someone else or to, like, what? No, you can't be doing that, man. I've got bipolar. If someone took my medication away from me, I would lose my mind. And that's what he obviously wanted to see. Like, he was torturing her, punishing her. That's not on, man. That's made me angry already. I really don't like this guy within the first 10 seconds.
Whereabouts are mysterious. We know plenty about his past. Born as David Kelly, Shmorky has gone to great lengths to conceal his true date of birth, going as far as to censor snapshots of his personal website from the Wayback Machine.
That is a red flag if I ever saw one.
And getting the Wikipedia page about him taken down in its entirety to keep people from finding out when he was born. Fortunately, his original Wikipedia page has been archived through a site called WorldWizzy, which in and of itself is a very obscure and defunct snapshot of Wikipedia from 2007. But thanks to the archive, not only do we discover that he was born in 1980, putting him in his mid-40s as of the writing of this video, but it also covers his earliest pieces of animation work. While the page doesn't go into his life before the year 2000, it does list a comic called Living in Greytown as the first thing that got him online notoriety. Now, this comic was very rudimentary and low quality, with it often being completely uncolored and using default fonts and speech bubbles, but regardless, it was good enough for the time to be hosted on KeenSpot, one of the few relatively successful webcomic portals that was active at this time. You see, KeenSpot had just been created that year after a larger and earlier webcomic portal called Big Panda went under, meaning all of their user base were now looking for a go-to website, with that new go-to immediately becoming the most popular webcomic portal, being able to more than double its size in just a couple of years. This massive influx of webcomic aficionados, paired with KeenSpot's business model of sharing the site's revenue with its content creators and having a paying readership, was a very fortunate circumstance for Shmorky. And as far as we know, this was the first instance of him being truly financially rewarded for his work. That's a lot more than most amateur 20-year-old artists can say. So by all intents and purposes, he was doing pretty well for himself. While the page for Living in Greytown has since been sold and repurposed into a canine business, it has been permanently enshrined in none other than WikiFur, the furry Wikipedia.
No.
I hope this serves as foreshadowing.
No, this is gonna get, yeah, this, like, from the title to that, I think I've got an idea of where this is heading.
The success of Living in Greytown, Shmorky went on to create even more webcomics, such as Purple Pussy, which is about a purple cat, by the way, just so there's no confusion. And once Living in Greytown came to an end, it was succeeded by a spin-off about one of the main characters.
There's gotta be some subtext there. It's gotta be a double entendre, surely.
Lizard. Nowadays, the website for the Lizard comic leads to some Russian website, and the Purple Pussy one has been replaced with an ominous "Purple Pussy is coming soon." What is still accessible, however, are the very positive reviews of Shmorky's work, along with a couple of animations he had posted to Newgrounds that got a decent amount of views for the website standards. To put it simply, people liked Shmorky and his work a lot, despite how simple and amateur his stuff was. But even at this point, it was also clear that Shmorky had a much less, shall we say, advertiser-friendly side to him. On his website, which, although archived, is extremely difficult to use due to how limited the snapshots are and how ancient its web design is, all of his comics are listed along with an age rating. While Lizard, his most popular comic at the time, was listed as PG, he also has plenty of comics that are listed as 17+, or being for mature audiences. One in particular, titled Smut, was written under the pseudonym Cave Deli, an altered version of his real name, and it focused exclusively on depicting not safe for work imagery. In one of the comics, Shmorky draws himself as some kind of goblin with a top hat, saying that he hates doing not safe for work drawings, but changes his mind whenever he gets a paycheck. The implication here is that Smut, along with other not safe for work comics, are done as commissions and not because he wants to do them. However,
Do you know what? Yeah, I find it very like a big red flag when someone is doing not safe for work cartoon drawings. That is a huge red flag for me, man.
From my understanding, when people commission not safe for work art, it's usually for their own consumption and it contains specific imagery of their liking, whereas Shmorky's smut comics are very much in line with the rest of his work and their themes and humor. It's also worth noting that he did a lot of these. Every blue number here is a new smut strip. There's
Hi there! Would you like to receive a gift?
Yeah,
I'm a missionary for the
I'm
Church
alright,
of Jesus
thanks.
Christ of Latter-day
strip. There's like 3 years worth of them. I doubt anyone paid for this many commissions, especially this early on in his career when he was still very much an amateur and not that well known. Additionally, as his page showed, this was just one of multiple mature comics, to the point where they by far outnumber the comics that aren't mature. Lastly, there are an awful lot of strips that are parodies, quote unquote, of not safe for work furry art, and by that, I mean they're just regular, not safe for work furry stuff, but with some weird aspect shoehorned in. However, probably because he knew the not safe for work stuff was a lot more off-putting than his regular stuff, he focused his time on getting better at animation, and began grouping his more marketable skills under the name of Shmorky, even creating an entire dedicated website just for it. To bolster his separate identity as Shmorky, he even came up with a fake origin story for his name, claiming that it was originally the name of a real-life animator from the 50s. It's kind of hard to overstate how fortunate Shmorky's position was back then, since nowadays most Gen Alpha kids online don't even know what Shockwave Flash is, let alone how prevalent it was in the early internet. Before the early 2010s, when animation was still huge on YouTube, as a matter of fact, before YouTube even existed, the entire internet ran on Flash, an Adobe software platform that was used for pretty much anything, from animations on websites like Newgrounds to games on sites like Congregate, all the way to entire websites running on it, which, by the way, was the case with YouTube, at least in the very beginning.
Do you guys remember Miniclip way before YouTube, and it had games and clips on it? It's sort of like a mixture between Newsgrounds and a game site. Like, that was amazing, man.
This, in turn, meant that if you really knew your way around Flash, the online world was truly your oyster, and you could find work anywhere. So, after shopping his work around for a while, Shmorky eventually found himself in business with the website Something Awful, which at the time was one of the biggest and most profitable websites online. During the last decade, it seems like every online content platform has adopted a subscription business model, even if it's only a partial one. But way before many of the major social media players even existed, Something Awful was charging users.
Was that Andrew Tate in the bottom? What was he doing there?
There's a basic subscription fee in order to stave off spam bots and toxic users who would troll their forums. This made the owner of the website, Richard Kiyanka, also known as Lotax, very rich, and consequently, it allowed him to reach out to the people whose work he enjoyed and get them to work for him. One of those people happened to be Shmorky, who started working on a series of animations called The Flash Tub, a new edition of which went up every 2 weeks or so. But that wasn't all. You see, Lotax liked Shmorky on a personal level, so much so that due to feeling bad about how terrible his living conditions were, he had Shmorky come live with him. When Something Awful got itself an office, Shmorky and Lotax worked alongside each other every single day.
There's something a bit unsettling about where this is going, I'm not gonna lie.
And the two grew increasingly close. This was the de facto golden age of Shmorky, as he was beloved by everyone at Something Awful. Oddly, he never used his prominence to get exposure. If anything, he actively tried to conceal his identity to stay as private as possible. But despite his relative anonymity to the internet at large, he grew something of a cult following, as several of his comics and animations went viral. The first of which being relatively obscure now, but at one point in time, it was all the rage. Zalgo. Before it went the way of every other creepypasta and was saturated to death with increasingly worse revisions, Zalgo was first mentioned all the way back in 2004 in one of Shmorky's comic parodies, which he tucked away in a secret subsection of his website. The comic itself is pretty simple. It's an Archie comic strip, but the text bubbles have been replaced with ominous references to Zalgo. It became a meme on Something Awful and eventually made its way to 4chan's random board, where it gained its own life, being worked into these comics where everything gets distorted and the text is digitally corrupted to signal that Zalgo is coming. It reached peak popularity around 2009 when videos were being made to accompany the comics, and interestingly enough, they often featured Garfield, as in the cat, I hate Mondays, love lasagna, you know the guy. Keep in mind, this was years before any of William Burke's Garfield horror parodies that got really big, as well as the Lasagna Cat ARG, which makes me think that both of them were influenced by Zalgo, even if indirectly. Despite his creation being so influential that it spawned nearly 2 decades of variations and other successful art projects, projects, Shmorky was really taken aback by all the reinterpretations and changes that the concept underwent, saying, "I just made it up. It has nothing to do with Lovecraft. I'm not nerdy enough to make those kinds of references." And seeing it become a meme kinda killed doing further Zalgo edits in the future. For me anyway. Zalgo wasn't his only contribution
No, if people are doing derivative work of your art, that should be fuel to keep going, man.
to the early internet meta either, as in late 2006, another meme was born out of something awful, as a post compiled Yahoo Answers pages with particularly—
Whoa, wait, whoa. What does that say? I'm not even going to read it out because there's too many flag words in there. Does lead to after women at the initials. What? Me and my wife first have. Oh, I'm not even going to read it out, but like. What? What?
funny entries. A few months later, Shmorky dropped a new edition of the Flash Tub, and it included animated versions of each of these questions. Funnily enough—
Wait, what am I reading here? Anime, rape, and lovers. What do they all have in common? They're the scum of the internet, and that is the subject of. Oh, okay. I thought it was like promoting that sort of thing or something.
The text body of this post lists anime pedos, racist, and fart lovers as the scum of the internet.
Alright, I tried to censor myself. Thanks for that, Tom, for ruining it.
And coincidentally, Shmorky can eventually be made to fit into all three of those categories.
No.
Regardless of any of that, one of Shmorky's animated Yahoo questions, namely, "How is Babby formed?" was cut from the original video and re-uploaded to YouTube, where it now sits at a little over 2 million views. Also in 2006 came two other notable creations from Shmorky, one of them being the Furious Famicom, an animated parody of the angry video game nerd, and another one being a comic of his, with this one basically setting out to make fun of all other opinionated comics that set out to make the author's opponents look stupid, which is a precursor to what would eventually be called smuggies. At this point, Shmorky's comics had changed a lot, now taking on this kind of softened, almost CalArt style, the kind you'd see in a lot of mid-2010s Cartoon Network shows, which became especially popular due to how easy it was for amateurs to replicate. This style was eventually enshrined by Shmorky into a set of characters that he called Clerfs, which are these little genderless, furry-looking beings that he used as the basis for all of his drawings from that point onward. This was a far cry from the crude, sometimes hideous newspaper comic strips that Shmorky was originally known for, and although he retained the support of the majority of Something Awful, some people started to grow suspicious of the changes he made to his art style, thinking that they could be reflecting his personality in some way. One unsung hero decided to follow up on this suspicion and managed to find Shmorky's old smut comics from 2003, only to then also discover heaps of Shmorky's self-insert furry characters wearing diapers and pissing themselves. Through the now defunct Dave Kelly Central website, you can also find a curious connection to another online handle, Dave Bunny, which in turn was attached to a LiveJournal account that was promptly hacked and vandalized, as well as a series of posts on a website called Edgy Attack, which was basically a very old Rule 34 type site for the cretins of the online world at that time to host their strange art. What's also interesting is that the Dave Bunny alias could also be traced all the way back to 2001 on a website called VCL Art. Not only was this account directly linked to living in Greytown, it also featured images of anthropomorphic animals without clothes on. Although a lot of these images are now inaccessible due to issues with the archive, which frankly I'm pretty thankful for because I've seen enough weird stuff while researching this guy already. You can.
I dread to think what Turkey Tom's dreams are like, having researched all this stuff, man. I bet he has the worst nightmares in the world, where he's getting attacked by furries all coming towards him with filled up diapers. Like.
It also featured images of anthropomorphic animals without clothes on. Although a lot of these images are now inaccessible due to issues with the archive, which—
Is it just me, or is that just like completely degenerate? Like, no, it isn't just me. It's just objectively degenerate, like drawing not safe for work images of animals. Like, that is, like, yeah, of course, that is,
I'm pretty thankful for because I've seen enough weird stuff while researching this guy already. You can still see the file names for the lost content, which in order are stuff like Bunny Orgy, Bunny Dildo, Erect Wolf, Not Yiffy, and perhaps the most concerning one, Child's Death. There was now no denying that all of these pieces of art and all of these pages belonged to Shmorky, and there was also no denying that they kind of ranged from somewhat disturbing to gross to what is going on. And even beyond that, with retrospect, we can see that making this kind of content was hypocritical, since his Something Awful related works often made fun of the types of people that would consume this kind of art. In the face of these discoveries, an anonymous YouTube user made a video called Shmorky is a diaper fur, but unfortunately, due to how the video was formatted and the fact that Shmorky had a lot of charitability at the time and any negative attention towards him was not very popular, the video never got any traction, leaving some of the less advertiser-friendly parts of Shmorky in the dark for the time being. So Shmorky continued on making art, making animations for Something Awful, and getting paid doing it. Life was good. Until, a year later, when one of his drawings was allegedly plagiarized by an artist by the name of Todd Goldman, who displayed it in a Los Angeles art gallery as if he had made it. As you can see, the two pieces are nearly identical, the main difference between them being that Shmorky's was originally drawn in 2001. On the surface, this looks like a clear-cut case of an artist using a technical excuse to plagiarize another artist's work. In his official response to the accusations, Todd actually apologized for the incident, but he went on to claim that he had never seen Shmorky's work. Instead, he said that the t-shirt company he worked for, David and Goliath, received thousands of design ideas every month, and they're not always attached to their original creators, with one of these unsigned pieces happening to be one of Shmorky's strips. While this may seem like a feasible excuse initially, Shmorky later responded that whether this was true or not, it didn't really change the fact that all Todd did to the design ideas he got was paint them onto a canvas and claim they were his. But regardless of the legitimacy of Mr. Goldman's artistry, it seems that the case was ultimately resolved. Due to the public pressure mounting on Todd and the company he represented, lawsuit threats were issued to anyone who signal boosted the plagiarism accusations, and Todd promised to donate all of the piece's proceeds to Shmorky, seemingly putting an end to the matter. But the story was actually far from over. You see, all that I covered here was Todd's official response to the plagiarism allegations, but there's also an unofficial response that was much more revealing. According to the thread on Something Awful about this incident, when contacted about the plagiarism accusations, Todd responded by saying, "Every month, I paint the works of a file. This week, I chose the work of Dave Kelly. He's a huge infantilist furry. This is someone who draws baby anthropomorphic animals in disgusting situations. I'm not kidding. Once again, his name is Dave Kelly, and this is his page full of his lovely art. There are even some photos of the artist himself." Now, the link that appears right before this message is dead, but it was archived. Not only are there more furry self-portraits of Dave Bunny doing a lot of unsavory activities, but there are also other strange images here that appear to be Shmorky exposing himself to the camera. Although their true origins were still murky at the time. If baby fur self-portraits where you're wearing diapers weren't bad enough for people who saw this, there were also a couple of what seemed to be chat logs of some kind of server. The first one showed someone named Bakaboo relentlessly attacking and humiliating Shmorky, prompting everyone else in the chat to defend him. The second one had Shmorky admitting that Bakaboo was him on an alternate account, implying that he had made an alt account to attack himself just so that he could see other people defending him. But despite how weird all of this made Shmorky look,
that is that's gotta be narcissism, surely.
Admitting that Bakaboo was him on an alternate account, implying that he had made an alt account to attack himself just so that he could see other people defending him. But despite how weird all of this made Shmorky look, it somehow wasn't subject to further investigation from the goons. And yes, that is what Something Awful users call themselves, goons. It would take another 4 years for an—
What's a goon? Like, in the UK, a goon is like a henchman or something like that.
unknown user of the Encyclopedia Dramatica to create a page for Shmorky, exposing him for being a baby fur using other images that I presume also came from the same dump that Todd linked to. The page claims that Shmorky excused these images as being commissions because he had to. But who's really going to commission images of Shmorky himself as a furry in diapers? Unlike Todd's email, which was a one-off that only appeared in one thread, the Encyclopedia Dramatica page would stay up, like a prophetic monument to Shmorky's untold degeneracy. But once again, all of this flew under the radar and failed to affect Shmorky's career, as in that same year, he actually managed to reach new heights of recognition when he animated a video called Telephone Dog, which now sits at 2 million views. His reputation on Something Awful was still undisturbed, so much so that a couple of years later, he joined Low Tax on his gaming channel, Gaming Garbage, and for a hot minute there, it seemed like the channel was well on its way to becoming a relatively successful one. That is, until the metamorphosis began. As early as just 1 year after they started frequently making gaming garbage videos together, Shmorky's voice changed from its normal sound.
What is this game again?
It's Cry of a
Crisis. I am Rich Low Tax Kaneka, and with me is
Shmorky.
To a high-pitched nasal squeak, almost like a cartoon character.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is just Shmorky again today, and today we play.
This voice change also coincided with even more interesting changes in Shmorky's persona, as Something Awful completely lost its relevance in the early 2010s due to the rise of much more polished and active competing social media sites. He slowly stopped caring about maintaining his identity from his time on the forums, and began embracing his other side. Over on Tumblr, he took up a new name and began making—
Oh dear, as soon as I hear Tumblr, it's a big red flag.
Competing social media sites. He slowly stopped caring about maintaining his identity from his time on the forums, and began embracing his other side. Over on Tumblr, he took up a new name and began making a bunch of Clurf comics, often on the topic of gender and transgenderism, which also prominently depicted his characters in romantic exchanges with each other. It was also around this time that Shmorky began deliberately hiding his own age, as well as taking on the new identity of Daisy K, and making a habit out of wearing wigs and hats to conceal the fact that he was bald. Regardless of how jarring this whole thing was, the majority of Shmorky's community was now from Tumblr, as Something Awful was on its deathbed by this point.
Do you think his voice changed because he started going through hormone therapy or something? Like, I'm interested now.
So during this period, Shmorky's new identity was pretty positively received.
Or was it just like an affect that he changed?
The fact that he was bald. Regardless of how jarring this whole thing was, the majority of Shmorky's community was now from Tumblr, as Something Awful was on its deathbed by this point. So during this period, Shmorky's new identity was pretty positively received. Meanwhile, he kept getting better and bigger animation gigs, 2 of them being animated renditions of Game Grumps episodes, which have since been made private, one of them being a cartoon for a TV show called Aquabats, and another one being a fully animated version of the This Is Fine meme, which was done for Adult Swim and currently sits at 6.5 million views on YouTube. As far as being recognized as an animator, Adult Swim is a pretty prestigious place to have your work. However,
yeah, isn't Adult Swim the publishers of Rick and Morty, I'm pretty sure.
The dissonance between Shmorky and the gaming garbage channel audience was becoming increasingly unsustainable, so he further pivoted towards Tumblr, and at the same time, he also released an autobiographical comic depicting a very disturbing event. In it, Shmorky describes how he went through a rough patch after graduating in the year 2000, supposedly because the .com crash made it difficult for him to get online work. It's implied here that he got kicked out and had to live with some relatives of his during this period, and one of them, his uncle, is described as abusive, prompting Shmorky to try and find someone else to live with. So he hopped online and asked his online acquaintances if someone was willing to take him in, and promptly found someone. After giving this person his car as compensation for the months of rent he wouldn't be able to afford, the comic goes on to depict that this person he was living with was blackmailing him for sexual favors during his time there. It gets pretty graphic. And during Shmorky's retelling of events, he even claims that his friends didn't believe him when he told them about what was happening. And to escape his living situation, he had—
I believe him, because for some stranger on the internet to say, yeah, come and live with me, like, you gotta wonder what their agenda is. Like, are they just being selfless, or do they want something? Like, that's a bit concerning.
He was living with was blackmailing him for sexual favors during his time there. It gets pretty graphic, and during Shmorky's retelling of events, he even claims that his friends didn't believe him when he told them about what was happening, and to escape his living situation, he had to go back to his relative's house. At this point, Shmorky describes himself as becoming extremely depressed, depicting himself as sleeping on a couch with junk food wrappers all around him. Supposedly, things got even worse at this point in time, with his uncle getting angry to the point of physical violence, and once again, Shmorky ran away and had to find someone else to live with, where at that point he took, and I quote, every commission he could get, no matter how uncomfortable it made him. Now at the time, a lot of people felt bad for Shmorky, expressing how horrible of a situation this was. Meanwhile, others expressed a certain level of distrust, especially given the fact that he depicted himself as having to take any commission he could get, despite the fact that it's clear a lot of that not safe for work art was not done for commission, but instead done by himself out of personal interest. But criticism about Shmorky was once again pretty silent for the time being. That is, until 2016, when a new video went up on the gaming garbage channel titled Why Shmorky is No Longer With Us. While the video itself focuses exclusively on his jarring voice change, people were pretty shocked by a comment that Lotax left under it. I'd like to point out that when Shmorky's girl or boyfriend was claiming that I hurt my children and was part of a Wiccan cabal that distributed illegal tapes that her father filmed of her as a kid, he messaged my wife and said that he was scared for his life. We then spent the next 8 hours trying to figure out where he lived and get the cops to show up to defuse the situation and hopefully take her away, as she was threatening to kill him. Every time the cops came, Shmorky refused to talk with them because, as he told my wife, he was too scared. But, and I swear to God this is true, he said he was silently mouthing the word "help me" to the officers, but unfortunately they didn't catch it.
Wait, well, let me read that. Was going as what situation? Honestly, don't know excuse. Blah blah blah. Was going in Smokey's claiming part of a Wiccan cabal distributed. Wow, what is this? Schizophrenia talking, or is this like, what the hell?
After spending the whole night trying to help him not get killed by his girlfriend, Shmorky finally manages to get himself to safety, at which point he stopped communicating with Lotax and his wife altogether.
I wonder if this is when he withheld her medication from her. I'm curious.
Instead, he went online and talked about what happened on Tumblr. And although many people sympathize with Shmorky's situation, Lotax closed off his comments by saying, never mind the fact that the whole reason his partner went nuts was because he made her stop taking her anti-schizophrenia drugs. Nothing is ever his fault, and the various injustices of the world conspire against him. He's a brave soldier for being able to carry on and survive in this cruel world.
Oh yeah, he's a brave soldier, taking away like a vulnerable adult's medication that they absolutely need for survival. Yeah, brave.
This changed everything, and it really attracted people's curiosity as to what his girlfriend, later revealed to be a girl named Amanda, would say about it when she was back on her medications. As Lotax said, Shmorky immediately went online to tell everyone about his situation, which included audio of his girlfriend having a mental breakdown from Tumblr.
Please don't touch me again, please.
I won't. I'll never touch you again, okay? I'll never touch you again. I'll just do what you want. What do you want me to do? I'll do whatever you want. What do you want from me?
Stop screaming and pretending.
I'm not pretending. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight back. I can't fight back. Okay? If Hitler himself came here, he wouldn't be able to save me, all right? Nothing. Jim Howe, they're unbeatable. They're unstoppable. There is no answer. There is no answer to the Jewish question because they always win. They always win in their mind. They won.
Look, I don't want to put you in an institution, but I want you to get help, okay?
The goons.
What you flipping gaslighter? How the hell are you gonna like want to give her help if you're taking away her medication from her? There's a reason people like her and me are medicated, yeah? There's a reason, yeah? Like, what the hell? Like, if I don't have my medication, I get very poorly. And if someone was to withhold my medication from me, mate, oh man, like, no way would I allow that.
Speculated that his objective of sharing this was to make her look as bad as possible and to make himself look like the reasonable party. However, with the claims made from Lotax, people began to speculate that Shmorky could have created this situation himself. Eventually, someone made a post on the Something Awful forums asking about what happened to Shmorky's girlfriend, and about 10 posts in, she actually showed up. In her first post, she claimed that she had fled their apartment in Washington and gone to stay with her parents because she didn't want to be institutionalized as a consequence of what went down. After explaining that she had already found herself a job and was doing fine for herself, she updated others on Shmorky's status, claiming he was now living in a trailer in the middle of the woods with his institutionalized.
Wait, let me read this. Still here, still queer. I don't think I'll ever work up the balls to do it for reasons stated in this thread. Botching a job and waking up limbless in a hospital bed or some junk. What? I'm kind of an person at this point. I had to flee my apartment in Washington so they wouldn't keep locking me up and forcing me to take pills. So she doesn't want to take her pills, which is quite typical for someone with schizophrenia or bipolar like myself. Fortunately, I learned a long time ago I have to take my medication regularly. But I think it's even more typical with people with schizophrenia than it is with bipolar to not want to take their medication. From what I know. I've been holed up in my parents' storage room in New Jersey for the past month, having a staring contest with a bag of charcoal every night and coming to the conclusion that I just don't have the balls to go through with it. Oh, I know what it means. That's so sad and tragic.
Consequence of what went down. After explaining that she had already found herself a job and was doing fine for herself, she updated others on Shmorky's status, claiming he was now living in a trailer in the middle.
Let's read that. I'm sure my blah 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 or somewhere on the internet, go find them. For all the trouble people put me through looking me up all the damn time, I at least get a check every month from it. Been working an honest job at my dad's shop. I never felt good hypnotizing erotically. What? That sounds really R-wordy. Like hypnotizing someone erotically, even if it did bring good money. New Jersey's a miserable place, but at least I'm not half as worse off as Shmorky, stuck in his parents' trailer in the middle of the woods. Shmorky's family trailer is the kind of place that would make Charles Manson pale. A lot like Shmorky's family.
With his parents. And according to her, it was the kind of place that would make Charles Manson pale. I went there once with Shmorky to meet his parents and brothers. The trailer isn't in a town or trailer park. It's just deep in these dark, thick woods, down an unpaved trail with no civilization for miles and miles. He never shut up about how much privilege I had compared to him because he grew up in a trailer and no one cares about trans people in trailers. His family was very off. His mother is a short, trollish looking woman with red hair and a very shrill voice. His father was an old diabetic, wheelchair-bound man who just mumbled unintelligibly, not even making real sentences. He would say things like "fish fly high while the bumblebees cry" at random.
Wow.
I don't think he had dementia. I think he was just really high all the time. There was a weird thing on the wall of the room Shmork and I slept in. 3 children's drawings of gravestones. One with Shmorky's name, David Kelly, and his brothers Chris and Lance.
It sounds like the dad or the granddad or whatever is just on mushrooms constantly.
Stones had the year each was born, and that's how I found out Shmorky was 35 years old as opposed to 32. Why he felt the need to lie about such an insignificant number of years, I'll never understand. The trailer was kept the same way Shmorky likes to keep his house. A hoarder's paradise. Stuff everywhere. Kitty litter, piles of newspaper, old videos, all just thrown about. Meanwhile, the bathroom was so dirty you couldn't have paid me to take a shower in there. Interestingly enough, Shmork's parents were the Christian conservative type, and they called him David. Based on her description of the trailer being a cross between Resident Evil and the Final Fantasy house, you'd think that Shmorky was doomed from the start, but this really isn't the case. His brothers, Lance and Chris, apparently both lived normal lives despite their upbringing. She also added details about what it was like to live with Shmorky. For example, whenever they were going to leave the house, he spent an hour in the bathroom meticulously putting on makeup and positioning an extremely cheap yarn wig on his head, and this was such a common occurrence that she had to pee outside multiple times since she absolutely couldn't bother him during this process.
Let's read that, shall we? Let's read this and hope that my ears don't get some sort of disease. Not my ears, my eyes. Man, it was such a circus every day. After a while, I need to be careful what I say, so I'm gonna read it slow. Man, it was such a circus every day. After a while, just began to mentally numb myself and normalize everything. You should have seen him the day Facebook asked him to use his real name. He was, of course, going by Shmorky. His birth name is still David Kelly, so he came to me shaking and almost in tears, asking me to drive him to City Hall to get his name changed from David to Daisy. I'm like, don't you think this is a bit drastic? I mean, it's just Facebook. Yeah, this guy sounds like he's got his own mental illness going on, and it's untreated. And it's not unusual for creative people to also be paired with a mental illness or disease. And then I've got the speech about how, I don't want to say that word, inside every time someone calls him by the name David, and that he'll himself. So I'm like, all right, let's get this done. Now, you of course can't go anywhere with Shmorky until he puts his face on. This process takes an hour, literally an hour. You don't know how many times I almost went to the bathroom outside because I couldn't hold it anymore, waiting for the little miss to meticulously put his lipstick and eyeshadow on and position the yarn wig just right. What's a yarn wig anyway? So there we go, off to City Hall. Of course, when we get there, Shmork does the usual thing he does around people who aren't his crew of what the hell? At a convention or something. He just freezes like a deer in the headlights all the time. So I have to explain to these office women that the 6-foot-tall man in lipstick with me needs his name changed. At the end of the day, he didn't even go through with it because it cost like $400. And of course, being that his only source of income was Patreon, he didn't have it. And I may have been roped into paying for a lot of blah, blah, blah for him, but I wasn't going to shell out money for him to have his name changed over BS on Facebook. Okay.
When they did leave the house, she had to drive him and do everything for him because he froze like a deer in headlights whenever he was around people who weren't his crew. According to her, this happened when he threatened to take himself out if she didn't take him to City Hall to change his name to Daisy, which he apparently...
I hate when people threaten to end themselves, to manipulate people into doing things. I hate that, especially coming from someone like I've tried to end myself a few times, like and I like it's serious stuff. You shouldn't go throwing that stuff about willy-nilly, let alone using it to manipulate people. No, man.
Needed to do because Facebook was asking him to use his real name, and he didn't want to put David there. Regardless of the lengths he was willing to go to for his real-life transformation into his clerf Sona, Amanda describes him as being very confusing and inconsistent, sometimes screaming at her for not treating him in a sufficiently feminine manner, other times accusing him of treating her like he was a pussy. This also didn't stop him from endlessly going on about gender politics and fantasizing about the day that women would take over by force. Additionally, he was extremely insecure and obsessed with his self-image, refusing to wear anything that wasn't his own merchandise with his clerf characters on it, and going as far as to have Amanda sleep in a different room because he didn't want to see her without his yarn wig on, despite the fact that she very well knew that he was
Stop this video right now and pick up a book. Turn off
go
your
away.
phone, close your laptop.
bald. The other reason
Usually I review adverts, but I can't be bothered today.
they'd have to sleep in different rooms is that he had night terrors, which Amanda talked about since she, occasionally in the dead of night, heard frantic squeaking coming from his room. His obnoxious behavior and insane lifestyle wasn't limited to her either, as before he parted ways with Lotax, he'd apparently sleep in every day, get to work late, and when Lotax asked him to do anything, he claimed that it was a waste of his time and talent. In part, this kind of made sense because Something Awful was very much a dying medium at this point in time, but don't let that distract you from Shmorky's true motivation for refusing to work, his own laziness and ego. According to Amanda, he even turned down job offers from Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon because he demanded full creative control and wouldn't let them make any changes to his work.
No, that could have been such a big opportunity, man. You got to make some concessions sometimes.
Which in his case would necessarily be explicitly centered around his gender-related beliefs. When he was finally fired for his complete recklessness, let alone the fact that at this point, his animations and Something Awful at large were no longer making any money, he simply came home and informed Amanda that she was now going to pay for half of the bills. When she told him he should look for a job, he began screaming at her about how no one in a regular job would respect his pronouns, and that he deserved something better since he was an artist. To make matters worse, whenever he did take on actual animation work and made some money, it went away as quickly as it came by. In one of her posts, Amanda claims that shortly after his Adult Swim gig, she traveled to see her family, and during that time, his neighbors told her that he'd been hanging out with tweakers and had tried meth. Not much longer after, all $7,000 of the Adult Swim money was mysteriously gone, and his situation was so dire that he resorted to lifting Amanda's debit card out of her wallet while she slept to go shopping. As you can probably imagine, Shmorky's sensibilities were, indeed, seldom respected, since the couple was living in rural Missouri. As Amanda puts it, the average person in Pleasant Hill, Missouri did not know about microaggressions or pronouns or any of that stuff, so there was a mini meltdown every time some poor teenage donut shop employee uttered the word sir. At the end of the day, the person who always lost was me, because I'd be the one who had to hear him for hours. One particularly interesting post of Amanda's retells the story of him supposedly being violated, but in a very different way. He didn't have much to offer in the way of his rent, so he offered his mouth to some bear of a gay man.
Whoa.
Somehow he convinced himself that he was violated and had permanent PTSD from the experience of willingly giving head as rent. When another user asked if Shmorky spoke in his cartoon voice when he wasn't recording, Amanda confirmed that not only was that his one and only voice, but that he constantly spoke all day, every day. When they first moved in together, it took Amanda months to clean up Shmorky's place due to the sheer volume of trash he'd accumulated at that point, and instead of gratitude, Shmorky simply interpreted this as her doing her duty and proceeded to yell at her whenever she failed to do the dishes or vacuum. The funniest part of this is that while Shmorky whipped Amanda into being his trad wife slave, she frequently woke up to him sitting in front of the TV wearing a diaper playing Mario 64. To make matters worse, she claims that he frequently wore diapers when he went to work, unbeknownst to Lotax and everyone else. I will say right now that while Amanda's posts mostly seem to be credible and were later supported by other people who knew Shmorky in real life, it's clear that schizophrenia or not, she is a tad strange to say the least, for sticking with Shmorky for not 1, but 2 whole years. When replying to someone who asked about their intimate life, she said, he drew a lot of clerf not safe for work art. He loved drawing his clerfs in diapers. The disturbing thing is the subject of a lot of the clerf art had to do with older females taking advantage of little boys. It made me really wonder about his childhood, which, just judging from his family and that trailer, was not normal. He didn't like being intimate often, but when he did, he would put me in a diaper and powder my butt and roleplay play as my mommy. There were many times I just wondered if the life I was living was even real. He pissed his pants in front of me and put his face up against the wall, muttering, "I'm a bad little boy. I'm a bad little boy." Day 2 of me knowing him because he thought it would be sexy. He admitted to me that he liked locking women out of the bathroom in hopes that they would soil themselves and he would get to clean it up. He was also self-proclaimed poly, but he wasn't so much poly as he was just a cuck. He was always trying to get me into the idea of having another partner to cuck him with. Due to how absurd their relationship was described as, the other users began wondering how she could submit herself to being with him for as long as she did, and her response was that whenever he wasn't talking about gender stuff, he was a genuinely funny guy. Judging from many of his animations and posts from the 2000s, he did indeed have a unique knack for humor, although it was gradually and painstakingly replaced, or should I say consumed, by his obsession with his Clurf identity. Amanda outright says that she wanted to fix him and bring out the glimmer of humanity she saw in him, but as time went on, she realized he was only retreating further into his delusions. A couple of posts later, she details how their relationship grew increasingly conflicted and even violent, saying, "When we had broken up and he wanted me out of our apartment, he looked me in the eye, serious as cancer, and said, 'I can kill you,' you know. I think he really meant it." Shmorky had a serious temper, and he would get violent when he got angry, tear doors off of the hinges, smash things around the house. He was a big, angry, Polak, 6-foot dude with huge shoulders and kind of chubby. One time, he saw I was carrying a hot coffee in my hand and slammed a door on me, and while I got scolded, he yelled, "See? You never watch where you're going, you ADD case." Never apologized for it. There was a time in Washington when he thought I was talking about him online. He jumped up and tried to rip my laptop out of my hands, and while we were struggling, I pinched his hand by accident, and he called the cops. The cops came, handcuffed me, saw the obvious size disparity between us. I'm 5'1", Shmorky's about 3 times my size, and we're like, we're confused. The following days, he kept calling the police until he got one who was on a power trip and flat out told them I was beating him up and got me locked up. He also had a terrible habit of backseat driving. I was making a left on a dangerous intersection, and in the middle of it, he just started screeching in full squeak at the top of his lungs to the point where instinct took over and I just froze and stopped the car, almost getting in an accident. I go to put a hand on his shoulder, but I miss and brush my fingers against his nose, and of course, the next thing I hear is, "You hit me, you hit me." I never met a man so determined to hold the reverse status of a domestic abuse victim.
That's like histrionic behavior. That's no, it's not cool, man.
Try and prove her claims about his extensive collection of for personal use, Clurf, not safe for work art. She got her laptop from when she was with him and dumped multiple images he had drawn, many of which included disgusting images of baby Clurfs. These pictures became even more concerning when it was revealed that Lotex frequently allowed Shmorky to watch his kids. Shmorky loved Lotex's kids. He would get way too excited over them coming to the office, like giddily laughing with glee and clapping his hands excited. Shmork would go on and on about how mature and in touch with their emotions they were. And yes, Lotex let Shmork watch the kids while he went off and got drunk somewhere all the time. Shmork would even lurk the kids' Facebook and Twitter accounts, saying he was just critiquing their art. Shmorky was a child. He literally wanted to be one. He would sit in the house in diapers and footsie pajamas. How he found his size in footsie pajamas, I'll never know. And draw little children Clurfs on toilets with toilet paper wrapped around them, getting diaper changes. It was his whole world. His dream was to make cartoons for children that encourage them to shatter the gender binary. I would not want Shmorky making cartoons for any child.
Okay, I feel like crying. This is flipping awful.
Not after seeing his secret time collection. I shudder to think about what his relationship was like with one of his exes who had a child. Could you imagine mom introducing her new boyfriend and it being Shmorky? Eventually, people began doubting Amanda's story, particularly the part about Shmorky turning down gigs with big companies because they'd make him betray his Tumblr.
Sorry, one sec, man. Oh my gosh. This is horrible, man.
Values by getting him to draw conventionally masculine characters, to which she replied, he may have been lying about his job offers. He lied and told the police that I beat him up and got me locked up for a month. I wish he lied to me about his bathroom fetish, but he proved that to me in spades. After this, the topic got around to Shmorky's beliefs about gender and how they related to his fetishes, and Amanda confirmed that none of it was a new development and that he'd nurtured delusions about it since day one, just concealed it so that the goons wouldn't judge him for it. Amanda herself expressed some degree of gender dysphoria to him, but added that due to her being previously diagnosed with BPD and bipolar, she judged against doing anything permanent to her body. However,
wow, so she's got BPD, bipolar, and schizophrenia. That is a deadly cocktail, man. That she must suffer a lot. Wow, because I don't know if you know, but if you've got an illness already, a mental illness already, it's you're a lot more likely to have comorbidity than the average population, which means you're more likely to have. Okay, so say you have bipolar disorder, you're more likely to have schizophrenia on top of it than the average person is to have schizophrenia at all. So unfortunately, some people get stuck with multiple mental illnesses. I've got bipolar disorder, but I've got PTSD too, and generalized anxiety disorder. But she sounds like she's got it worse, man.
Shmorky was very insistent that she tried taking hormones and socially transitioned. In private, he once revealed to Amanda that he was a hermaphrodite with a full set of ovaries and a uterus. He also claimed to have a vagina behind his balls. Amanda said he was so convinced of this that he sat there spread-legged once, pointing to his gooch and saying, "See, you can kind of see where the opening is." And I'm like, yeah, I can totally see it.
Yeah, that's your bumhole, mate.
Even though there was nothing there but normal man gooch. During intercourse, he would want me to finger him there, and even got a period every month and swore that he was crampy, bloated, and moody. He was always moody. I had to excuse him being extra verbally abusive once a month because it was that time of the month. Despite all of his eccentricities, Shmorky retained very high self-esteem, telling Amanda that he had dozens of stalkers, composed of men, women, and everything in between, who were all tripping over themselves to get into a relationship with him due to how pretty he was. Mind you, this guy believed showering wears away at your skin and only did it once or twice a week, and during the days he didn't shower, he made sure to wear the same underwear every day. That is, when he was wearing underwear and not diapers. The rest of this original account from Amanda hasn't been properly archived and is mostly inaccessible now, but the Shmorky debacle continued over on infamous gossip forum Kiwi Farms. Since Amanda's last update was a few months old at that point, someone else who closely followed Shmorky for a long time claimed that he was now working at a Wendy's and no longer living with his parents, and that recording his girlfriend having meltdowns after he withheld her schizophrenia meds wasn't a one-time thing, but apparently something he made a habit of doing to discredit her as much as possible. Additionally, this poster brought attention to Shmorky's claim that it wasn't that his voice used to be normal until he started doing the squeaking cartoon voice, but that he had digitally lowered the pitch of his voice. This is clearly another instance of him rewriting history to pretend that he's a real-life clerf, as not only was his voice actually normal in other people's recordings, who would have no motivation to digitally alter it, but it's not just the pitch that changed, but also the inflection, which took on an obviously cartoonish tone by 2014.
Why is this making me so emotional, man? I've covered other Turkey Tom videos, and for some reason it's the mental illness aspect of it. And the withholding the meds, that's what it is. It's making me really emotional.
A bit later, Lotax himself joined the thread and gave new details about his relationship with Shmorky. According to him, Shmorky was indeed normal at one point in time, save for the occasional cat piss odor coming from his clothes. However, in the early to mid-2010s, his voice began rising in pitch, and he began wearing the yarn wig along with his girdle and a cape. Yes, an actual cape. In this post, Lotax gives a slightly different version of the story of Amanda being arrested, wherein he was called to the situation to act as Shmorky's translator because the cops couldn't possibly understand Shmorky's clerf speak. In a later post, he attached images of Amanda's messages to him during her meltdowns, and although much of it was genuinely schizophrenic rant.
Alright. I thought David Kelly was really... Do you know what? I don't even know if I want to read it. It's upsetting to me.
Ramblings about religion and conspiracy theories, there were minor moments where she seemed more cogent, during which she claimed that Shmorky had been purposely trying to keep her from moving out. Eventually, Amanda also showed up on Kiwi Farms, apologizing for her past interactions with Lotax,
Oh my word, I'm sorry,
and
guys.
explaining that her multiple psychological conditions were kicked into hyperdrive during that period due to losing 2 friends to suicide, along with her grandma and her dog, all in the span of days. She adds that while she sent those messages to Lotax, she was hallucinating gray aliens, shadow people, and Jesus Christ himself, telling her to go to Cambodia to find hidden treasure. However, she does.
When if I don't take my meds, I start hallucinating, man. It's scary. I see shadow people as well. Like for instance, I'll be in my flat, which is what you guys call an apartment, and I'll get a sense that someone's in my place. I'll turn around and boom, there's like someone there, but they're only there for like a second and then they disappear like that. And then, but that's enough to get my fight or flight racing as if someone's intruded my flat. And it's really, really scary. If you've got like schizophrenia or bipolar, man, listen to your psychiatrist, take your medication. Like, yes, there's side effects, but the side effects of not taking your medication can be deadly, and not just like deadly in like a physical sense, but also socially, you can absolutely destroy your life when you're not well like that, because you can have outbursts at people and never recover from them because they don't understand that it's the illness. But yeah, no, this is a very sad story. I really feel for this lass, whatever her name is. I've already forgotten it. I'm sorry. But his girlfriend, like, I really feel for her.
To reiterate that her messages about Shmorky trying to keep her from leaving were true and not a consequence of her delusions. After this was clarified, Amanda circled back to the topic of Shmorky's yarn wig, which he claimed was his real hair and not a wig at all. It's kind of genuinely sad to read about how Shmorky went from frequently exercising and playing retro games with his girlfriend and taking her out to eat to never leaving the house and having to ritualistically paint himself a different color with makeup in order to be able to even make it out the door. In response to Amanda's resurgence, Shmorky began posting about her on his Facebook, saying that she was alt-right and suggested that all of the claims about his fetishes were fake, as instead he was apparently asexual and Amanda had violated him. I'm not going to explicitly cover all of the chat logs between him and Amanda here because it would instantly demonetize this video, but I should say that they're available online and contain more than enough proof not only that Shmorky is not asexual, but also that he's an absolute pervert from a different dimension. As for
Yeah, I'm good. I won't search that stuff up.
the accusation that
I'll just take your word for it, Tom. I'll just take your word for it.
she had violated him, Amanda addressed it, claiming that this accusation was first made when they were broken up and when she had already bought a plane ticket and was packing up to leave, at which point he called the cops to tell them that she had beat him and violated him. Not only did this work to prevent her from leaving, but he apparently did this exact same strategy 6 times before Amanda finally escaped. When she did finally manage to leave, it was only because she was taken into—
this is a bit much for me, man. Wait, hold up. I'm a bit overwhelmed. When I was packing up my things to leave, he kept calling the cops and telling them I was beaten and whoa.
him. Not only did this work to prevent her from leaving, but he apparently did this exact same strategy 6 times before Amanda finally escaped. When she did finally manage to leave, it was only because she was taken into a psych ward, during which Shmorky broke up with her, saying that he didn't want to become Uncle Anthony, wasting his life caring for a sick wife. I hate to make an aside in a story this convoluted already, but Uncle Anthony was the uncle who supposedly beat up Shmorky and evicted him. The thing is, like many of Shmorky's tales, it's possible that this didn't happen at all. At least, that's Amanda's take on it, since when they got engaged, Uncle Anthony was the only member of his family who called them and congratulated them, telling Amanda that she sounded like a beautiful person, and saying that they made a sweet couple. Despite how amicable he apparently was on the phone, the mere fact that he called their house up sent Shmorky into such a terrified frenzy that this was the one and only instance Amanda could recall of his voice going back to normal. According to her, nothing made Shmorky break his Clerf character. Not being misgendered, not Amanda's schizophrenic meltdowns, not the campaign to prove he was a diaper fur online. His true nemesis and one weakness was apparently a guy who dedicated his life to taking care of his sick wife. People online speculated that this was yet another instance of Shmorky rewriting the story of his own life by accusing someone else of hurting him to make himself look like the victim. But soon after Amanda's posts, Shmorky began melting down, threatening to do something drastic to himself. However,
The best thing about life is that it ends and then you don't have to think about anything ever again. Okay. Unfortunately, I can relate to that, but apart from that, I cannot relate to anything about this guy. Like, what is going on with this guy?
This did nothing to stop Amanda from continuing to add to the raging dumpster fire that was the Shmorky thread. In another post, she claimed that he adopted multiple rats during their time together, but refused to clean their cage, feed them, or even give them water. Due to his neglect, a few of them died from infection, and he immediately replaced them with more rats. Between bringing up the past instances where he'd been supposedly violated, and all of the times he tried to take his own life, Shmorky never even tried to prove that the things people were saying about him were untrue.
I hate how people use past abuse as an excuse to abuse other people or animals. Like, that is just not on at all.
Most likely because he didn't even have a chance of doing so. Within the following months, 2 more people who knew him before any of these controversies came forward. One of them was none other than Shmorky's brother. While he didn't provide much in the way of new information, he confirmed that Shmorky had a relatively normal childhood, dispelling a couple of speculations about him being beaten or abused. used. The other one, meanwhile, was Hellion, one of his friends from the very early 2000s when Shmorky was regularly using IRC. And this guy confirmed the story about him using alt accounts to attack himself for sympathy. According to the same poster, Shmorky's original friend group cut ties with him once he began accusing one of them of violating him. He even tried to warn Lotax about what kind of person Shmorky was, but Lotax decided to pay it no mind and hired Shmorky anyway. Eventually, Hellion and Amanda got to talking, and Hellion eventually claimed that all the way back in 2001, Shmorky had lured not one, but two underage girls into doing diaper roleplay with him online. He speculated that there were many others, given the sheer number of chats he was in and how often he tried to get people to do it with him. Another damning piece of evidence that was brought up was that all the way back in the early 2000s, it seems like Shmorky did the same thing he did to Amanda to another girl he'd been with. After breaking up with her, he got on IRC and made sure to make her look insane to discredit anything she could potentially say about him. It's at this point that yet another demented dimension of Shmorky's online presence comes to attention: Sandy Pants. Through screenshots of Shmorky's Fur Affinity account, which Amanda got through an old friend of his, it looks like after Dave Bunny was terminated, Shmorky created yet another secret identity, under which he had a new art style and would use it to engage in his fetishes. This online handle was quickly connected to a Twitter account of the same name, and eventually a YouTube account that contained a video of Shmorky with a voice changer on, doing his needing to go to the bathroom routine while playing the game Facade. The most disturbing part about all of this is by perusing the other videos that are up to this day on the Sandy Pants channel, someone else's voice can also be heard.
Why is this video getting to me more than the other Turkey Tom videos? I don't understand, man.
The bathroom routine while playing the game Facade. The most disturbing part about all of this is by perusing the other videos that are up to this day on the Sandy Pants channel, someone else's voice can also be heard.
This just in, my butt. In related news, there were some farts.
As you can hear, this is not Shmorky with a voice changer on. This is definitely a girl, and while this is very speculative, she also sounds quite young. If this wasn't bizarre enough on its own, more Sandy Pants art kept surfacing, and every time a new image showed up, the more damning it seemed. Here we have a character sheet that's labeled from 2011, when Shmorky would have been 31 years old. It describes Sandy's age as somewhere between 6 and 20, and not only establishes she's dating an older guy named Jacob Wolf, but also specifies that she likes to tease older men. Among the many other comics associated with the Sandy Pants handle, there was this drawing of Sandy with her boyfriend with his hand on her shoulder, which, despite not featuring anything obscene, is some of the most creepy stuff here.
That is awful. First, a wolf is a predator. Second, that smile and
Also found that prior to the Sandy Pants handle, the Fur Affinity account attached to the Sandy Pants content was named Peaches the Puppy. Up until that point, due to how different the art styles were, many people doubted that Sandy Pants was indeed Shmorky, but this really sealed the deal. Not only did Amanda show that the Peaches account was mentioned by Shmorky in his chat logs, but another user provided emails sent directly from his personal email asking for someone to record themselves saying things like, "Hello, my name is Peaches the Puppy and I'm 12 years old. And I like going potty. I like poop in my pants. PP time." In their investigation of the handles, they also found Sandy Pants' F-List website, which is widely used by furries to list out the fetishes they have. Here, we have incest, diapers, hyperscat, infantilism, babysitter, age play, underage characters, and coercion/blackmail. What a wonderful time to be alive. Setting aside all of the speculation and sleuthing, someone eventually came forward and claimed that a friend of theirs, who was 16 at the time, was approached by Shmorky, who proceeded to send them not safe for work baby art and attempted to have intercourse with them, calling it his secret time. This other victim of Shmorky's also joined the farms under the username Carefully and shared a cursed picture of Shmorky's room at the Something Awful offices. Here we have what appears to be a children's bed with various plushies on it, some Super Mario Logan stuff going on there. I do like the cat, I'll say that. Nice cat. Probably the only good thing here. And of course, we also have Shmorky's original character, a Clurf in plushie form, along with what appears to be baby versions of some Mario characters. Although with some of these plushies, it's hard to tell if this is a baby version or a small version, chibi version. You never really know with Shmorky. Around the same time, there was also a second massive chat log dump with more Clurf roleplaying and mommy dynamics. Here's a little blurb from a random page. Daisy stops squirming. He can feel himself making a mess in his pants. He just keeps quiet and waits until he's done. He blushes hotly, knowing he'll be in trouble or at least get teased by the cute girl if she finds out. He carefully gets out of the chair, feeling the heavy load shift around inside his pants. The brown stain is pretty noticeable. What is going on? I mean, hey, this is pretty romantic stuff. Maybe he should have given up animation and started writing. He's definitely talented. I personally could read this stuff all day. In Carefully's first official post, she said he roleplayed 3 ways with an imaginary 7-year-old named Darla,
No. How long's left? Oh man, can I get through this? This is making me wanna flipping claw out my eyes.
Like his Clerf, but wearing a dress and with a flower. He tried to make me roleplay changing his diaper and eating his excrement. He cheated on Amanda with me, and I noticed he did a similar piece of art for both of us where me and her were drawn as adults disciplining the child Shmorky. I had thousands of his degenerate roleplay chat logs, but they're long gone. I wanted his approval so bad that I never told him to stop. His favorite roleplay was bath time, where one of us was a child and one of us was an adult bathing the child, and he would have the adult violate the child, after the adult changed the diaper and ate what was in it, of course. She shared a few more of her chat logs, all of which involved some kind of degenerate, disgusting stuff, and also showed that he initiated all of these exchanges, which often meant abruptly cutting Carefully off while she was trying to have an actual conversation. In the wake of all of this information suddenly becoming public, Carefully began going through all of the people Shmorky was regularly interacting with on Twitter, assuming that they might also be at the receiving end of his manipulation and degenerate roleplay. According to her, she found 5 underage people that she speculated he was potentially running the same routine on. But feeling that a siege was closing in on him, Shmorky decided to go scorched earth on his online life. First, by posting a comic alluding to taking his own life on Tumblr, then making a series of tweets attempting to discredit the allegations against him by claiming they were all the product of homophobia and transphobia. But of course, he did not address any of it directly. Lastly, over on Facebook, he posted a geolocated status that showed he was at the hospital, which was later revealed to be because he had indeed made an attempt on his own life and was being kept under observation. What remained of Shmorky's Tumblr hug box continued to delude themselves that this was somehow an arbitrary smear and harassment campaign against Shmorky for no other reason than his gender identity, ignoring all of the evidence that he was an incestuous, zoophilic, fart, poop, and pee fetishist who serially preyed on mentally ill girls and abused his girlfriend for 2 years.
You think it can't get worse, and then it just does.
On January 6, 2017, he made his last post to his Patreon announcing he was leaving for good, but not before sharing several of what he called his hospital doodles. And just like that, down went Shmorky. After 2 decades of carefully cultivating an online presence and putting quite a bit of effort into his drawings and animations, his delusions and his strange proclivities ultimately got the best of him. Even Lowtax, the man who was largely responsible for whatever success Shmorky had for over a decade, had completely abandoned any hope that Shmorky would ever be rehabilitated or redeemed. On Twitter, he shared an image of his daughter's rendition of a Clerf, obviously making fun of Shmorky's taste for loaded diapers. After his threats to take his own life, Lowtax dedicated an episode of Gaming Garbage to Shmorky, and when I say dedicated, I mean ridiculing his many threats to do something drastic for attention. This was an interesting development since prior to all of this going down, Lowtax was generally pretty tolerant of, let's say, people with alternative lifestyles. But once he got a whiff of how people from Kiwi Farms behaved, he began actively incentivizing his forum to engage in the same shenanigans, saying that that's what they
So did he just change his stance because of as a PR thing?
Of, let's say, people with alternative lifestyles. But once he got a whiff of how people from Kiwi Farms behaved, he began actively incentivizing his forum to engage in the same shenanigans, saying that that's what they should have been doing all along instead of being afraid of Tumblr. This controversy got so much traction that even other furry ABDLs, meaning adult baby diaper lovers, decided to publicly denounce him and clarify that they would never—
I hate how I got what that acronym was straight away. You know you've been watching too many Turkey Tom vids when that happens.
They should have been doing all along instead of being afraid of Tumblr. This controversy got so much traction that even other furry ABDLs, meaning adult baby diaper lovers, decided to publicly denounce him and clarify that they would never touch or text an actual minor. How screwed up do you have to be for the diaper fetish furry community to excommunicate you? From former associates and friends to the general DeviantArt community at large,
It reminds me of when Cyrax got kicked out of the Juggalo community. Like, how low do you have to go to meet those standards?
And to clarify that they would never touch or text an actual minor. How screwed up do you have to be for the diaper fetish furry community to excommunicate you?
I do not believe that. No, I do not believe that. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, yeah? But if you're into adult baby diapers, yeah, and all that sort of thing, and age playing, and all of that flipping degenerate debauchery, like, how can you say that you would, like, come on, man? If anyone's going to do something like that, it's going to be people with those proclivities.
Former associates and friends, to the general DeviantArt community at large, everyone was coming out of the woodwork to call him out and separate themselves from his brand, just to make sure that no one mistook their silence on the issue for Shmorky support. Good on them for being vigilant, I guess, because one of Shmorky's associates, Brandon Wirtz, or Party Doge, who was believed to be a silent contributor to the Sandy Pants account, never spoke out. Casey Green, on the other hand,
you've got to wonder how many of those people are as bad or nearly as bad as him, and they were only detracting and slating him because they didn't want to look suspicious themselves or get looked into themselves. Like, you got to wonder.
Being vigilant, I guess, because one of Shmorky's associates, Brandon Wirtz, or Party Doge, who was believed to be a silent contributor to the Sandy Pants account, never spoke out. Casey Green, on the other hand, who was known to be a friend of Shmorky's from years prior, did publicly disavow him. In the meantime, while many people thought that Shmorky had either succeeded in his attempt or had been confined to a psych ward, forum users attentively surveilled the accounts believed to be his, and quickly realized that he was still active, using his Sandy Pants account on Ink Bunny to claim that he wasn't Shmorky, which of course no one really believed. Over the next few months, and to some extent to this day, Kiwi Farms users became paranoid about every furry artist potentially being Shmorky secretly returning to the crime scene, and they definitely had reason to be paranoid. In April 2017, by closely examining a Twitter account called Regibald, which was created back in 2012 and seemingly only ever posted about Shmorky, sleuths found account after account after account that followed the exact same pattern to a T. Most of them joined in 2012, they all followed Shmorky, only ever talked about Shmorky, all had similar and Shmorky-ish sounding names, and they all followed each other. I found and counted 47 of them, but there may be more that we just haven't heard of. Shortly after these accounts were discovered, someone found an account on Pixiv that had a similar art style to Shmorky under the name Anne. However, as soon as the account was shared on the KF thread, the account was taken down, which would only happen if whoever owned the account was indeed Shmorky, who took it down as soon as he noticed he'd been found out. As far as I know, this was the most dead to rights case of a Shmorky alt caught in the wild, as even their posting styles were identical. While new Shmorky activity was pretty scant, that didn't mean new information about Shmorky's older activity stopped surfacing. As late as 2018, Amanda spoke about getting in contact with a friend of Shmork's who told him that many years prior, Shmorky had been caught trying to do erotic roleplay with a 14-year-old. While there's no evidence for it, it doesn't seem that Amanda was being a total schizophrenic poster in this particular post, and since the rest of the stuff she provided up until this point did pan out, it could very well be true. Evidence that Shmorky would interact with someone that young is that another baby fur enthusiast claimed that they used to ERP with him on a website called YifNet when they were 15, and Shmorky would have been in his early 20s. It doesn't seem like this is someone who would lie about that to make Shmorky look bad, since this is clearly someone who still admired him, which
how long's left on this video? Oh my word.
That makes it even more disturbing. Amanda's perspective on Shmorky is that he was most likely now living with his mom, while others thought that he had actually died by this point. Unfortunately, Lotax never got to see how Shmorky would ultimately turn out due to his unfortunate passing in 2021. Shmorky, on the other hand, does seem to be alive, since there's evidence his phone number is still in use, at least as of mid-2023. One thing's for certain though, his legacy was definitely kept alive through Stone Toss of all people. Being an artist himself and into the general lolcow scene, Stone Toss framed his character drawing style as a parody of Clurf's, which he instead called Frolks. Given that Stone Toss is diametrically opposite to Shmorky when it comes to politics, to say this is ironic is an understatement. Shmorky is quite unique in his own right. The self-consuming artistic delusions and cartoonishly high-pitched voice of Chris Chan, the bizarro white trash background of Cyrax, and the sexual obsession with peeing of Daniel Larson.
He's like a conglomeration of them all. That's mad.
Mention the sheer lifespan of his career, since he maintained an online presence for over 2 decades. He's truly one of a kind. All one can hope is that he's never allowed to communicate with a minor ever again. It's highly unlikely that he'll ever come back to the internet publicly, but given his propensity to return under aliases, who knows? He could be among us right now, watching the same video you're watching, in the same room that you're sitting in, plotting his next move. And there would be no way for us to know. But for the time being, I've been Turkey Tom. Thanks for watching this very, very long video about Shmorky. And until next time, leave me alone.
All right, Tom. As per usual, great video. And guys, I'm sorry for getting so emotional. I don't know why. This video impacted me more than like the other ones. But yeah, you've been locked into Nuclear Reaction Faction. Subscribe for more, check out my other content, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.